He walked into that glass and stone kitchen like a storm in a suit, saw the bright cloth across my back, saw his baby tucked safe and quiet, and said it like a verdict. "What is that?" I said, "a carrier. The way my grandmother taught me, the way 1,000 grandmothers teach," and Jackson Hale shook his head, voice sharp enough to chip the counter. "Take it off. Pack your things, you're done." Nora flinched at the sound. I felt my hands go cold on the wooden spoon, and I knew right then this house didn't understand the difference between expensive and right. Yeah, that happened. 2 months earlier, I was in Cleveland, counting quarters under a buzzing light, trying to split rent, and Aunt Ruth's pills, and Malik's tuition, telling the brave little lie we tell our people when the fridge hums at you for being empty, we're going to be fine. On a nail behind the closet door hung the long wrap my family swears by soft from years of babies and summer heat, the closest thing we have to a diploma in keeping tiny bodies steady. The phone rang with an Austin number. Mrs. Alvarez said, "Live in, 8 months old, good pay, immediate start," and I said yes before fear even stood up. Jackson's place sat above Lake Travis, like money had decided to build itself a mirror floors. You could skate on art that didn't know you, a nursery with more monitors than a hospital and less warmth than a bus stop at 3 a.m. Nora's cry had an old sound, like grief learned too young. His binder found me first schedules and angles and settings, a policy for light levels and a policy for naps, and a policy for my hands. And I followed it because that's what they hired, a follower of rules, not a maker of miracles. But at 3 a.m., when the house was a museum and that baby was hoarse from crying, I started humming the tune my grandma used when the power went out and the air turned heavy, and for a second, Nora's chest softened. I looked at the suitcase where the wrap lay folded like a secret texted Aunt Ruth from the bathroom, because it was the only room that felt like somebody's, and she texted back, "Baby, do what you know. Rules that hurt a child aren't sacred." I tied the wrap like a prayer you can wear, sat Nora high on my chest, until her cheek found my heartbeat, and the whole place changed. Pitch, not silent, just right, the way a house sounds. When rain decides to stay, she ate without a fight, then watched my knife and the carrot. Like it was ballet, grabbed my finger with that gummy grip that says stay, and I thought, there you are. Mrs. Alvarez saw us and her shoulders fell, the way shoulders do when they remember how to breathe. "What did you do?" she whispered. And I told her the truth, the same thing women have done in kitchens, with no marble, and a radio that only plays the news we carry. We hum, we keep going. Dr. Patel came by and called it what the journals call it: co-regulation, secure base, vestibular, soothing. The man's eyes crinkled like hope, and the chart finally started acting like a child's, not a machine's. Jackson noticed results, first, methods, second, asked questions that sounded like compliments until they felt like cross-exams. "What exactly changed, Zoe? Why couldn't 7 trained professionals produce this patience?" I said, and he repeated it like it tasted bad. The company he ran was getting dragged for the kind of culture fit that actually means you fit me. He brought that tension home, gave me a tablet to log. Every breath timed my breaks like a lifeguard with a whistle. And I smiled, because sometimes you have to then tide the wrap under a big cardigan, like millions of women have done without permission. The day it broke was a day built to break. Board meeting went sideways. Someone told him out loud what the headlines were saying, quote, "The listening you don't do is hurting us." He came home hungry for control and found me stirring a pot with his daughter sleeping on my back. "What is that?" he said again, but colder. "A carrier." I said, "Please let me explain." And he said words you only say when you think money means right, primitive American standards, proper training, and every syllable landed on me and my people like a slap. I kept my voice low, Because Nora was between us, Mrs. Alvarez appeared in the doorway. With eyes like a smoke alarm, without batteries, I untied slowly. The way you lift a bandage, and the moment Nora hit his arms by the book, she arched and screamed with the kind of panic that makes time wobble. I told him I would gather my things. I walked upstairs with my dignity and that cloth, and I left that museum of a house to be loud with its own choices. The next 3 days were a ruin, you know what I mean? The glass threw her cries back at them like a siren. Dr. Patel said, "Failure to thrive if she doesn't stabilize." Mrs. Alvarez said the sentence that houses like that never want to hear. She loved your child. And your child knew, and at 2 a.m. on the third night, Jackson sat in the glow of a screen, typing words he never imagined typing. Baby-wearing benefits, skin to skin, science trauma-informed infant care, and all the places he donates to told him what my grandma told me for free. Oxytocin helps proximity calms. Ancient methods survive because they work. My phone rang in the morning. His voice scraped raw, Zoe. I was wrong. She won't eat. She won't sleep, please. And I said, I'll come with conditions. Respect a real apology to me and to my family, because insult echoes, and a promise that you'll learn the why, not just tolerate the what. And he said yes before I finished the last word. Teaching him was simpler than his people made him. I showed him how to tie, so the cloth carries the weight, how to sit on the edge so your body becomes a rocking chair, how to hum without lyrics, so the melody belongs to the baby. Put it in science terms. Jackson respects cortisol, falls, nervous systems sink, secure attachment sets the thermostat for a life. And the first time Nora slept 20 real minutes on his chest, I watched something locked in his face unlock. He cried without noise, the way men cry, when they're not sure the room will hold it. And after that, the house started to smell like onions and butter instead of sanitizer. The radio Mrs. Alvarez brought in played Tejano and soul, and the kitchen finally felt like somewhere gravy could drip. At work, he asked me to talk to his team, not as a guru, just as someone who's seen what habit hides you. Assume competence looks like whoever trained you. I told them when someone wins a different way, you call it unscalable, when what you mean is unfamiliar. They didn't love it, but they loved the results. Interviews changed, rooms changed, products changed, and the headlines stopped choking. The future not gone, but quieter. Back home, I told Aunt Ruth the apology was real, not magic, but maintained. Jackson set up her appointments in Austin so she could rest where people would fuss over her for once. Malik flew down with a folder like a billboard and left with an internship he earned. Yes, he's my brother, and yes, he's good. Both can be true. We had a dinner where the table was too long and the chicken tasted like chicken anyway. Jackson asked Aunt Ruth to teach him the rap knot, slowly messed it up 3 times, swore soft, then did it right, and stood like a scout with his first badge. And if that sounds small to you, you've never watched a man choose humility over performance. People ask if it turned into love. I say, we built a family, the way you build a kitchen, line fast, honest, a little messy, always hungry. Grief didn't leave it. Just stopped running. The meeting, we made space for it to sit and be quiet when it needed. A year later at a town hall, he did what last year's version of him would have mocked. He said on a mic that he didn't know what. He didn't know that he mistook rigidity for excellence, that he called something primitive because he was embarrassed not to know it yet. And then he said the line, I keep on a sticky note over the sink, the future doesn't belong to people with the best binders. It belongs to people who know when to pick up the baby. Folks clapped because that's what hands do, but more importantly, they changed the way they hired and mentored. That's the applause that matters. Nora became a mayor with pigtails waving at everybody, running to me and to him with the same happy speed, which was the whole point, 2 steady places to land. The house looks like a life now, magnet, ABCs on a high-end fridge, A sippy cup disrespecting a designer table pictures that aren't all professionally lit. A quilt Aunt Ruth stitched, spreading color across all that glass, like warmth finally got a key. And still, because life loves a twist, a board member pulled Jackson aside last month and said, "You're different now, not in a bad way. But when we hired you, you were a certain kind of leader, all this listening, softness. It worries some people." He brought that sentence home like a burr in his sock, sat at the counter while I peeled oranges, asked, "Do I have to become the old version of me to keep what I built?" And I told him the truest thing. People will always try to sell you an easier story about strength. They do it with crying babies and with CEOs who cry too. He nodded, split an orange like it might reveal a fortune, said, "I'm not going back," and he didn't look relieved. He looked ready to pay whatever it costs. So that's the story in a kitchen that remembers yelling, and also remembers the day it learned to hum again, with a child who sleeps on two chests, and a company that might make it because its leader finally understands the smartest person in the room is whoever's listening. Was he wrong to fire me like that? Absolutely. Was he wrong because he didn't know or because he didn't want to know? That's the part I still think about when the house goes quiet and Nora's breath gets heavy on my shoulder. Tell me what you think. Where's the line between standards and prejudice, between expertise and ego? And have you ever seen an apology actually balance the harm, or did it just start the work? Drop your take, your story, your argument, I read them all.